Hi everyone, you're watching the New World News Network. I'm Jamie Starr, and on this episode we are going to get into immigration as the new form of slavery and what I call neon-Nazism. So here we have a quote from Albert Pike, who some attribute to being a top Illuminati member. He was involved with numerous secret societies, I believe founding the KKK as well. And he had this long, it might have been part of Morals and Dogma actually, where he speaks about the 3 world wars that will take place. And when he was describing the Second World War, he used the term Nazi way before it had ever been in the public dialogue of Germany. And here we have what he has said about the Third World War. The Third World War must be fomented between the Christians and the Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam and Christianity mutually destroy each other, leaving the political Zionists in control. And this is one of the things we see going on with the importation of certain Islamic groups. We see the foundation for the Third World War being laid between Russia getting involved in Syria, the U.S. and NATO having problems with them, and the importation of these groups into America now. So from that, though, keeping this in mind, I want to go into a video about Donald Trump's immigration plan that I had to find on Facebook.
Trump's immigration proposal came true.
The U.S. has become a dumping ground. We need to build a wall.
I want him to go out, but I want him to come back in legally.
It would become a disaster with ripple effects across the entire economy. Fast food counters would close, as an estimated 11% of all food preparation and serving jobs are held by unauthorized immigrant workers. Fruits and vegetables would rot, as 26% of the farming, fishing, and forestry industry is comprised of unauthorized immigrant workers. Home improvement and construction projects would stall, because an estimated 14% of all construction and extraction jobs are held by unauthorized immigrant workers. Prices for lettuce, spinach, and strawberry would go up. Social Security would also take a hit. Undocumented workers contributed $13 billion in payroll taxes to old age, survivor, and disability insurance in 2010. They use about $1 billion in benefits, so that nets to a $12 billion contribution that wouldn't exist if you deported them. Undocumented immigrants in California make up nearly 10% of the state's workers and contribute $130 billion annually to its gross domestic product. Not to mention, by one measure, it would take about 20 years to find and deport that many people. That's 650 busloads every month for 2 decades. So if you want your entire economy not to collapse, perhaps think twice about deporting all undocumented immigrants.
Now, this was the exact rationale given for slavery, realistically. The Founding Fathers, and Jefferson especially, knew that slavery was wrong. They knew it was immoral, but they rationalized it by needing it for the economy at the time, which is one of the things I mentioned. You can see here on my Facebook post, I said, this video illustrates perfectly that immigration is the new slavery. The reason we want to import thousands of people from Mexico and Africa is to keep McDonald's open. Sound familiar? Like when we imported blacks from Africa as workers, remember? Yet if you oppose the immigrant-based economy, you are racist. Never mind that unemployment is huge, especially amongst teens and blacks, because these are jobs they once held. We need slaves, I mean immigrants, to do the work, and if you don't want slaves, I mean immigrants, your economy together, to keep your economy together, well, you're racist, and so what if we keep Syrian refugees in camps? If you don't want Muslims in camps, you're Hitler and you're racist. This, of course, is me bringing up the wild accusations they have put towards Donald Trump over his objections to these policies. And I believe there's plenty of other better solutions, but it's true. And we're also creating an underclass. I had someone come to me and, of course, try to comment that this is nothing like African-American slavery because they were taken against their will and everything. And I brought up the fact that they are sold into slavery. They were sold into slavery and bought. There was an economic trade where they were essentially the workers. Excuse me. Uh, they were essentially the workers of that time period. And, people tend to only think of that in a moral, emotionalized sense, and they don't think of it in terms of the economic sense where you're housing them, feeding them, and everything like that. And it obviously would have worked out. I not to be naive, but you hear stories where upon people being freed, they stayed on their plantations, and I think that's because some plantation owners, like some business owners, probably realized if I keep these people in better shape as opposed to beating the crap out of them daily, my output will be much higher. But the one thing they didn't want of the slaves was the ability to read, because they know that would have given them more mobility, and they would have had a higher expectation of what they want out of life and from themselves. And I think we see this with the illegal immigrants, especially with the Hispanics, in the keeping the language disparity between the two. We really are creating a subclass with the illegal immigrants, and there should just be a objection to the illegality of it. That's why they try to use euphemisms like undocumented immigrant worker and such. All of this is very reminiscent, though, of Nazism, in that you have all these factions, and I mean literally factions being imported just for the sake of this divide and conquer, and it's all just being kind of rationalized as diversity. The more difference we can incorporate, the better it will be, and diversity is great and all, but not when it's being lumped together with these overseers in the context of them looking to create problems so then they can rationalize their excuses for reactions and everything. This here I wanted to point out because one of the other things about what I call neon-Nazism is basically the Bernie Sanders supporters. The neon headband wearing mixed match socks hipster crowd that really is just such privileged little brats that they really think everything can just be given away for free. And there's cycles society goes into, and basically whenever a society gets too big for its britches, it tends to collapse. And I think that's what's going on here. It goes on in stating that there's a list that came around in 1963 outlining the communist goals for America. And it starts off with, U.S. must accept the coexistence as the only alternative to atomic war. It says extension long-term loans to Russia and Soviet satellites. Provide American aid to all nations regardless of communist domination. Resist any attempt to outlaw the Communist Party. Do away with loyalty oaths. This would be like the Pledge of Allegiance. Continue giving Russia access to the U.S. patent office. Capture one or both of the political parties. I think we can see that the liberal side is basically captured by communism and socialism, which are really one and the same. It's a mindset of putting the masses before the rights of the individual. Collective rights trump individual rights, and you see it on the Republican side too. Bush's whole family tree is filled with Nazis, and it's all funded with Nazi money. So use technical decisions of the courts to weaken basic American institutions by claiming their activities violate civil rights. So you can see this with the gay marriage being pushed on churches and such. Get control of the schools, use them as a transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda, soften the curriculum, get control of teachers' associations, put the party line in textbooks. This has been going on. I was taught in school that, communism and socialism look good on paper, but they've never been, it never comes to fruition right, which leads these naive people to the idea that America will be the one to do it right. Use student riots to foment public protest against programs or organizations which are under communist attack. You could say Black Lives Matter and the Mizzou protest are akin to this. Gain control of all student newspapers, infiltrate the press, get control of book review assignments, editorial writing, policy-making positions. Gain control of key positions in radio, TV, and motion pictures. Continue discrediting American culture by degrading all forms of artistic expression. An American communist cell was told to eliminate all sculpture from parks, buildings, substitute shapeless, awkward, meaningless forms. And this is the whole, the deeper meaning thing, where evil shit gets rationalized all day long with this sort of, crazy rationalizing skill everyone has, this sociopath mindset of, well, oh, maybe there was a deeper meaning. Maybe this person killed someone because they were wronged in some way themselves, Oh, this person lashed out and murdered someone because they were traumatized as a child. The deeper meaning thing, and it needs to stop at some point. Especially in art, that's why you see shitty music, shitty movies, shitty paintings. I mean, literally, someone could take a dump on a canvas at this point, and it would sell for millions. I saw that there was a photograph of a potato that sold for millions of dollars last week. It's this whole concept that, you could have a fucking, whatever, a statue made in animal droppings, and it would be acclaimed. So, control art critics and directors of art museums. Our plan is to promote ugliness, repulsiveness, meaningless art. And this has definitely been going on. Eliminate all laws governing obscenity by calling them censorship and violation of free speech and free press. Yeah, and this is where tasteless decadence just sort of seeps through, the Miley Cyrus and people who are just raunchy just for the sake of being raunchy, but after so long, the raunchiness becomes normalized. Break down cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography and obscenity in books, magazines, motion pictures, radio, and TV. Present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as normal, natural, and healthy. Infiltrate the churches and replace several revealed religion with social religion. Discredit the Bible and emphasize the need for intellectual maturity, which does not need a religious crutch. You see this going on all the time, especially. It's taught all through the textbooks. Eliminate prayer or any phrase of religious expression in the schools on the grounds that violates the principles of separation of church and state, which is, they've obviously twisted the separation of church and state, because realistically the separation of church and state would be the state, the school, not being able to tell the child they can't pray. Discredit the American Constitution by calling it inadequate, old-fashioned, and out of step with modern needs, a hindrance to cooperation between nations on a worldwide basis. We definitely see this, especially when they get into the Second Amendment. There's like a part of their brain where the phrase is, shall not be infringed, just doesn't register. Another thing, now that I think of the Constitution, though, as far as what I was saying about immigration and slavery, people also don't understand. Americans, the nation was founded by people who thought taxation was a form of slavery. Slavery isn't limited just to what happened to African Americans. The British considered taxation a form of slavery and thus set up America. And after the African Americans were freed, very shortly after, citizenship was established. And with citizenship, now you have the whole taxation system, and you have children being born owing $50,000 or so to the government. So you're owned by the government. You owe someone before you're even able to talk or enter into a financial agreement. Your life is signed away to a system that says you owe it something. I mean, it's essentially a form of slavery. It's just become more technical and more logistics, and it's all hidden in the legal language, though. And because there isn't a direct hands-on approach with it, people fail to see it, or they just don't want to admit it. So, discredit the Founding Fathers, present them as selfish aristocrats who had no concern for the common man. This you see with, like I mentioned, people not being aware the Founding Fathers did have a moral issue against slavery. Belittle all forms of American culture and discourage the teaching of American history on the grounds that it was only a mirror of the big picture. That's deeper meaning, big picture. give more emphasis to Russian history since the communists took over, support any socialist movement to give centralized control over any part of culture, education, social agencies, welfare, mental health, clinics, etc., or Bernie Sanders. You see him getting tons of support. Eliminate all laws or procedures which infer with the operation of communist apparatus. Eliminate the House Committee on Un-American Activities. Discredit the eventual dismantle of the FBI. Infiltrate and gain control of more big unions. Infiltrate and gain control of more big business. Transfer some of the powers of arrest from the police to social agencies. This is basically CPS. Treat all behavior problems as psychiatric disorders, but no one but psychiatrists can understand or treat. This is this crazy institutionalization of everything. Dominate the psychiatric profession and use mental health laws as a means of gaining coercive control over those who oppose communist goals. This is the, if you're crazy, we're going to take your guns away stuff. So we see all of these things that Americans were once afraid of. Discredit the family as an institution. Encourage promiscuity and easy divorce. This is the, I'm a single lady, independent woman, the fucking Beyonce culture, basically, that we see out there that frowns upon motherhood and marriage and all of that stuff. Emphasize the need to raise children away from the negative influence of parents. Attribute prejudices, mental blocks, and retarding of children to suppressive influences of parents. Create the impression that violence and insurrection are legitimate aspects of the American tradition, that students and special interest groups should be able to rise up, united force to solve economic, political problems. This is the burning down of Ferguson, Missouri. Overthrow all colonial governments before native populations are able to self-govern. Internalize the Panama Canal. Repeal the Generality Reservation of the United States. Cannot prevent the World Court from seizing jurisdiction over domestic problems. Give the World Court jurisdiction over nations and individuals alike. So there, you see all of this stuff is coming to fruition, and so we are definitely in a sort of communist socialist takeover, and it becomes very obvious with the divide and conquer schemes and Bernie Sanders running. One of the other things I found recently that I thought was interesting is there's a whole book on the fact that, and most people think, oh, if you're against homosexuality, people of different races, and so on and so forth, that you're neo-fascist, neo-Nazi, and everything like that, when the Nazis were a lot more of a complex scenario than a lot of people could even start to understand. And it was very similar to what it is now. It was just radicalized groups being misled to use excessive force and just insanity against other people. But there were large groups of, it says, Len said not 10% of the men who in 1933 took fate of Germany into their hands were sexually normal. And this is that, again, perversion of the norms in life. And it goes on saying how the SS and all of the brown shirts and all of that were all homosexuals, but they were masculine homosexuals, and the ones they rounded up and killed were the effeminate homosexuals. And it mentions that there were even videotapes from in the concentration camps where you would see, I'm trying to find the exact quote, but there were, here. Historian Frank Rector writes of a film made by the SS that was secretly made for the enjoyment of a select coterie of Nazis, showing a wild, drunken orgy of beautiful boys and handsome young men being whipped, raped, and murdered by the SS. So here you have a crazy orgy where people are being killed, like eyes wide shut with guns, basically. And it's all these cycles in society that keep repeating and come along with decadence and everything. And to call Donald Trump, who's speaking out against it, to be like Hitler is very, very far-fetched, because he's directly opposing all of the policies that are encouraging these. And we've had a form of Nazism in office in a while, so I wanted to get through this video, which shows some of the similarities between the two.
Paul Brown says he fears President-elect Obama could establish a Marxist dictatorship. Brown said in an interview Monday, quote, "It may sound a bit crazy and off base, but he's the one who's proposed this national security force." Brown is referring to a July speech by Mr. Obama in which he called for a civilian force to relieve the military of some of its national security burden. That's exactly what Hitler did in Nazi Germany, and it's exactly what the Soviet Union did. He's showing me signs of being Marxist. You have to remember that Adolf Hitler was elected in a democratic Germany, end quote, Paul.
We've got to have a civilian national security force that's just as powerful, just as strong, just as well funded.
Is this compulsory then? Well, you have to, in a sense, it's a required of everybody.
We're gonna spread freedom. Obama's gonna change it. Obama's gonna lead 'em. We're gonna change it and rearrange it. We're gonna change the world. Now's the moment when he's forced to sing. Sing with all your heart. For our children, for our families, nations all join as one. Sing for joy and sing abundant peace. Courage, justice, hope. Sing together, hold each precious hand, lifting each other up. Sing for vision, sing for unity, lifting our hearts to sing. Yes, we can, yes, we can, yes, we can, yes, we can.
I'm going to fast forward this a bit, just because this is dragging on, and we don't need to hear this propaganda. But you see, he has all these children, which, I mean, he's been in office for 8 years, so I imagine these kids are all old enough now to vote.
Lead 'em.
And now you have compared to
werden umrahmt von Chören der Berliner Hitlerjugend.
We cannot continue to rely only on our military in order to achieve the national security objectives that we've set. We've got to have a civilian national security force that's just as powerful, just as strong, just as well funded.
Because of Obama, I'm inspired to be the next architect.
Because of Obama, I'm inspired to be the next engineer.
Because of Obama, I'm inspired to be the next fireman.
Because of Obama, I'm inspired to be the next architect.
Because of Obama, I'm inspired to be the next chemical engineer.
Because of Obama, I'm inspired to be the next entrepreneur.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Obama needs a race to make. Yes, we can. Embrace the burdens of our past, now become the victims of our past. Yes, we can. Take
Now, I think it's funny to play into the conspiracy theory that everyone is an actor, and there were things with the Trayvon Martin shooting that were very suspicious, like the clothes in the coroner's report not matching the picture, and the way the media was able to just run with the whole scenario. There was definitely a handful of fake narratives that stemmed out of that scenario, and I think definitely the overt racism of calling Trayvon Martin a defenseless child and this sort of belittling him as a young black male. But playing devil's advocate, and there were only that picture of Obama's youth squad, that was only maybe 7 or 8 guys. It wasn't a huge amount of people, and I don't know if their enrollment ever got that expansive, but it would be very interesting if those were Trayvon Martin, the kid from Ferguson, the guy from Mizzou, if those were all the plants that have been used in all of these operations that people are calling psyops and whatnot. But I just figured I would share that to show that, there's definitely remnants of Nazism and the techniques used by the Nazis that you can see all through permeating society, whether it's children being, taught to sing these songs about their leaders, whether it's this sort of bringing in all these different groups and radicalizing and pitting them against one another, or if you just want to look at it all as the overall outdated idea of government. Realistically, all these ideas of, society's been revolutionized by the internet, but our governance hasn't. We still use this sort of old democracy, which is from old Greek and Roman systems and stuff, and the UCC and the monetary and maritime admiralty laws, those are forms of monetary enslavement and taxation and ownership through corporations and birth certificates. And So, I mean, if you aren't aware of that stuff, definitely look into it, because you are owned. The numbers on your birth certificate are traded on the stock market. Your owners even switch. So, there's all these control systems that are ancient. They go back, hundreds and hundreds of years. And we're in such a modern society that I almost feel like we could change it and almost limit some of the decadence just by updating our form of governance under modernization. Like in my other video, where I got into the junk science, I pointed out that there is a solar-powered aircraft, and why aren't we using these devices? If we have these, because this actual sustainability would disrupt the economy. That's why they have to just have it be through taxation. They can't have it be through, collecting and filtering your own water, growing your own food. They can't have actual sustainability, free energy, and things like that, because there's no economy that can be based off of that. So that's why they have to create the false sustainability. More and more people are being led into these artificial constructs and realities and mindsets, and they have downplayed humans' ability to innovate so much that we are presented these ideas and then presented solutions that are awful, awful solutions that I can't believe people go for, like socialism, but it keeps popping up. So here's my video on what I call neon Nazism. And is slavery the new immigration? I hope you all enjoyed.